Hello, everyone. This is Jessica Pettit, and who do I have the honor of interviewing today?
Hello, Jessica. It's Deb Daggett.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. As we have started these conversations, I've kicked everybody off with two really big open-ended concepts that are just kind of floating around in my mind. So I want to ask you those. There's no wrong answers. The first one is about diversity dividend. This usually comes up when people are talking about why to do diversity trainings. What does diversity dividend mean to you when thinking about invest, action, and return?
Great question. I tend to get annoyed when that's phrased differently. What is the business case? I like diversity dividend much better. I believe that the diversity dividend is really evident in the lack of engagement being reported across all types of workplace organizations, whether it's private sector, public sector, nonprofit, that people are not being fulfilled by their jobs, but yet at the same time, younger generations more and more are identifying themselves by what they do for a living and less with hobbies and vacation. So coming back to your question, what's the diversity dividend? I think when you focus on diversity and the corollary inclusion, you create a place where people can be more fulfilled when they're at work, when they're with people that they can become friends with, that they can be authentic with, that they don't feel like they have to shape shift in order to fit in. So that's extremely important. And if you're a business leader that thinks that's too touchy-feely, that's how you get discretionary effort. That's how you get innovation. And then that does deliver both financial impact and realizing the strategy.
Absolutely. I completely agree. What about the concept of other duties assigned? Sometimes this is at the end of a job description. Sometimes this is something you volunteer for, but you're not necessarily rewarded or your performance isn't measured on. What does asterisk other duties assigned mean to you?
To me, it can be kind of a bifurcated set of tasks. There's the grunt work that we all have to share so that it doesn't fall on the least tenured or the most junior or, the women, because men don't do administrative tasks. That's one pocket of other duties as assigned. The other is an opportunity. It's being given a chance because there's something that needs to be done, to try something you haven't done before, to test your limits, go outside your comfort zone, be part of either an individual or team effort that allows you to spread your wings and be exposed to things that you haven't had a chance to try before. So I think it's both of those things.
Awesome. I know that in previous conversations and the answers to those questions, your work is coming through too. But can you tell me a little bit about when you talk about the power of allies and how that shows up in all of your work across your experience?
Yeah, that started for me at a really young age when my youngest first cousin came out as gay when he was 16. And the reaction of the school, most of my family, most of his friends was just horrifying. And I was in college. I was 21. Other than being a friend and being a good listener and loving him to pieces, there wasn't a whole lot I could do for him. But at that point, I vowed that I would devote the rest of my career and my personal life to being an ally for the LGBTQ community. And as I learned more and more about that and leaned into it, it made me realize that all groups need allies, and that within an organizational structure, if the executive sponsor for a grassroots team is an ally versus someone who identifies as a member of that demographic group, they are so much more powerful because they can engage in unfettered advocacy without the appearance of it being self-serving. And we now know many years later that from research, people who engage in advocacy for their own team, so to speak, suffer personal and professional consequences. That may be like 100% wrong, but it does happen and it's now been documented. So not only are cross-diversity allies more effective when they take the time to learn, to invest, and they commit to being visible and vocal, but they also are not paying a penalty. And in fact, I always say, think of it as reciprocal mentoring, because you will get as much or more as an ally than you are giving if you are authentic and committed, because you will get to the center pole of the tent for that community, that person's life, and it will enrich your life in ways you're not going to even be able to predict.
I completely agree. I think that I like the idea of unfettered advocacy and this reverse mentorship. I often talk about, and from my book, that I talk about the importance of kind of 4 tent poles, which is curiosity, generosity, vulnerability, and authenticity. And by being able to provide a space for other people to do those things, you also get to do those things.
Yeah.
So I like that language. That's great. What do you think in your work, full scope, is the difference between being an ally and an advocate?
An ally respects the community that they have chosen to be an allyship with, to the degree that they both advocate for nothing about us without us, which is the disability community's original mantra, but now used by all communities. So they will advocate for that. They will not speak for the community, but they will align with the community in a way that it allows their voice to be heard, to be authentic, to be unfiltered, but also will help people to frame what they need to say in a way that it can be heard and then amplify it.
Excellent. That's great. Are you ready for my 2 favorite questions?
Sure.
What is something you have changed your mind about lately?
So that's a really good question, and I've been thinking about that. And I think the big one for me is I thought I understood and was addressing, I didn't have the words for it before Robin DiAngelo's book, but white fragility. I've always struggled to different degrees, even though I am a white woman, to really identify with my white identity. And I've gotten better at that as time has gone by. But now, something I've changed my mind about is how hard I need to push my fellow white people around issues of racism. And not allow myself to fall into the various traps that are set, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, when you get an extremely thin-skinned response to the slightest question or dialogue around race. So I'm redoubling my efforts, and I'm not taking no for an answer. And I'm utilizing the fact that as a little person with a visible and also non-apparent disabilities, I have a little more license to push. As my mother said when I thought I needed a fake ID at age 19 to get into the casinos with my friends, she said, "You could shoplift a canoe and no one would question you." Which I realized was true. There was such low expectations that I could, quote unquote, get away with things. And that includes getting away with challenging people who don't want to address really important issues in our society. And I think racism is at the top of the hit parade. I mean, I know there's a lot we need to address, but that is the most intractable and the least willing to be discussed by people with the most power and privilege.
Mm-hmm. Okay, favorite question number 2. Okay. What do you absolutely know?
What do I absolutely know? I absolutely know something that's in your book, that vulnerability is a superpower. Mm. If you are willing to be vulnerable authentically and ask for what you need, that is the surest way to make friends, to influence people in power, and to own your own power. And people cannot sometimes wrap their minds around that. We're raised to believe that vulnerability is a risk, that you should never show that. I remember I was interviewing for a job, and I was asking one of the people of color, who was a very senior executive, what their words of wisdom were for me. And they said, never let them see you sweat or shed a tear. Well, it's actually the opposite is true. If you realize that the best way to get people engaged and involved is to give them something to do. You know, that old whitewashing the fence, everybody wants their own personal bucket and brush, and then the work gets done a lot faster. Well, I find that if I give people something to do and they feel like they're helping me, and everybody wants to help a little woman with a disability, let me tell you, you're like a flashing neon sign, whether it's the grocery store, the parking lot, or work. And rather than get frustrated by that as a very independent, self-sufficient person, I just keep reminding myself it's a superpower. The other thing is to embrace the things that people think they know about you. So when Star Wars came out in the 1970s, I was in college, and immediately my nickname became Yoda. And as a young woman, you know, being compared to an androgynous green creature living a hermit-like life in a swamp wasn't exactly what I, was aspiring to during the dating years. But over time, I realized that too is a superpower, because they're ascribing it partly how I look, but also that whole thing about there is no try, only do, and being action oriented. And I think when you teach others to own their vulnerability, that's their Jedi warrior strength. That's their force. And by modeling it for them, they're more willing to try it. And that's what Yoda did, is he showed people how to be vulnerable as a strength.
I agree. And Yoda is one of my favorites. And I'm not really one of those movie kind of people, but I do like Yoda. That's great. Okay. Are you ready for the lightning round?
I am.
Okay. So you picked 3 numbers from my icebreaker cards. So the first one is number 13. So you have to answer it very quickly off the top of your head. Okay. Number 13 is, what is the story behind your name, legal, preferred, and or a nickname?
So I didn't have an alliterative name until I got married, and then I got to be Deb Dagit. Sounds like a private eye. And then I added diversity when I formed my consulting business. So I just love it. And Dagit means fish, and my husband is a fisherman. So I keep telling him he made the name up, but he swears he didn't.
Awesome. Okay, number 27, share a life goal that you've set for yourself.
I want to direct plays. I did it in high school and college, and for a little while in community theater. And while I get close to it when I make videos and set up big events, I really want to do more script writing, play directing, everything behind the scenes. And so I'm working towards how I could make that happen.
That's rad. Okay, last one. Name the most beautiful place to which you've been.
I'd have to say Ireland, which, part of my heritage is Irish. Ancestry let me know it wasn't the whole thing, but I just love it there. The green, the feel of it, the cliffs. I love the ocean. I love ocean crashing against, the beach. I think it even rivals Monterey. I was born in San Francisco, California, but Monterey is one of my favorite places to go. But wow, those cliffs and castles, I love it.
Nice. As someone from super Northern California, I live 6 hours north of San Francisco in Eureka, but it is really gorgeous here. I completely agree. My husband's brother lives in Ireland, so we go back a lot, and it's the cold, salt, foamy air that seem to be very similar to where we live too. So that's very interesting.
And the people, the culture is very warm and welcoming.
Very cool. Well, Deb, if people were to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they can email me, and it's super easy, debdaggett@gmail. Go to my Facebook page. I'm on Twitter. I don't do that a lot. So, yeah, just a little bit of social media, but the easiest way is email.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all that you've added to this crazy idea I had.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to remaining in touch as friends and colleagues.
Absolutely.